The vault under the Anatolian mountain had been sealed for 12,000 years. Humanity had never opened it. The instructions, passed down through 30 generations of guardians, were absolute. Only open this when the Star People arrive. So when the Coalition delegation finally landed, humans and aliens descended into that torchlit chamber together, expecting ancient human relics. The stone floor gave way to a single obsidian tablet, perfectly preserved. The senior Coalition ambassador leaned forward, translated the inscription, and went completely silent, because the message was signed by their founder, the revered being who forged the Coalition, who every species was taught to worship. He had carved this message in his own hand and sealed it inside an earth mountain, 12,000 years before he was supposed to have been born. This is the story of what that message said, and why it shattered the entire founding myth of the Galactic Coalition. The being they worshipped as Verk Orin, the architect of interstellar unity, never came from the core worlds. He came from here, from Earth. And if that was true, then everything they believed about their own origin was a lie. The discovery happened in the summer of 2024, when an international team of archaeologists finally cracked the seal on a subterranean chamber buried beneath the Taurus Mountains in southern Turkey. The site had been known to locals for centuries, a massive stone door carved with symbols no one could decipher. But until the Coalition made first contact, humanity had no idea what those symbols meant. They were, in fact, a form of old galactic script, and they translated to a single instruction. When the Star People come, open this. Only then. For 12,000 years, a lineage of guardians had protected the vault. They didn't know what was inside. They just knew that their ancestors had sworn an oath, passed from father to daughter, each generation adding another stone to the path. The guardianship survived empires, religions, wars. And when humanity finally unified under the United Nations of Earth and joined the Coalition, the last guardian, an 87-year-old Kurdish woman named Layla Demir, walked into the new Department of Galactic Heritage and said 4 words: "It is time now." The Coalition sent their best. Ambassador Kale Varath, a senior delegate from the founding species of the Council, insisted on leading the excavation personally. Varath was not just any diplomat. He was a direct descendant of the first generation of Coalition founders, and his family line was revered. He believed this vault would contain primitive human artifacts, tools, pottery, maybe some crude star charts, proof that early humans were trying to reach the stars. He was prepared to be indulgent, perhaps even amused. Instead, on the third day, his team reached the inner chamber. It was a single room cut from basalt, with no air, no light, and no sign of disturbance for 12 millennia. In the center, resting on a pedestal of fused silica, lay a tablet of polished black obsidian, 24 inches by 16, covered in intricate carvings. The stone was not from Earth. Spectral analysis later confirmed it was quarried from a planetary system over 700 light-years away, the home system of Verk Orin himself. Ambassador Varath translated the first line. Then he stopped breathing. His 4 eyes widened. His trembling hand traced the signature at the bottom, the personal sigil of Orin the founder. No one had seen that sigil used for thousands of years. It was supposed to be known only to the highest echelons of the Coalition. But here it was, carved into a stone inside an earth mountain in a chamber that predated the Coalition's entire recorded history by thousands of years. Varath's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely a whisper. "This is impossible." The message was not a greeting. It was a confession, a warning. And it was addressed directly to the Coalition, from the one being they all believed had created it. The same being who, according to every history book across 200 species, was born on the planet Cathar 3, 50,000 years after this vault was sealed. The math was devastating. Either Verk Orin was a time traveler, or the entire history of the Coalition was a fabrication. Vareth looked at the human scientists, his expression a mix of terror and awe, and said, "We need to know who really built this. And we need to know now." But the real shock was still buried beneath their feet. Because the tablet wasn't the only thing in that vault. There was a door beneath the pedestal, and whatever was behind it, the tablet had warned, could not be opened until the coalition was ready to face the truth. The question that would tear the galaxy apart was simple. What truth could be so dangerous that a godlike founder sealed it under a mountain on a death world called Earth? And why did he choose humanity to guard it? The archaeology team was about to find out. The obsidian tablet was only the beginning. When the team lifted the pedestal, they found a descending stairway carved directly into the bedrock, each step precisely machined by tools that had no right to exist on Earth 12,000 years ago. The walls were lined with a material nobody recognized, a dark, reflective alloy that absorbed light and emitted a faint hum. It was the same alloy used in the oldest Coalition starcraft, the kind preserved in museums on Cathar 3. The kind no species had been able to replicate for millennia because the formula had died with the founder himself. The air inside the lower chamber was breathable, sterile, and held at a constant temperature. Someone had designed this place to last. At the bottom of the stairs, the team entered a circular room 30 feet in diameter. In its center, suspended in a column of pale blue light, floated a sphere. It was about the size of a human head, perfectly smooth, and it pulsed with a rhythmic glow like a heartbeat. Ambassador Vareth recognized it immediately as a memory vessel, the most sacred artifact in the Coalition, said to contain the recorded consciousness of Verk Orin. Only one was ever supposed to have existed, and it was enshrined in the Council's grand sanctuary on Cathar 3. That it was here, buried under a mountain on Earth, meant the one in the sanctuary was a fake. Vareth ordered everyone to step back. His voice was trembling. He told the team that according to Coalition scripture, the founder had left a single memory vessel with his final words, and that its contents would one day be revealed when the Council faced its greatest trial. But that trial, he said, was prophesied to come at the end of the Coalition's unity, not at the moment of humanity's arrival. Yet here the vessel was, pulsing, as if waiting for something. As if waiting for humanity to grow up. The human team leader, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a linguist from the University of Barcelona who had spent her life studying the vault's guardian traditions, asked the obvious question. If the founder left a message here, what was it waiting for? Vareth didn't answer. Instead, he walked slowly toward the sphere, his claws clicking on the stone floor. When he was 6 feet away, the sphere spoke. Not in a translation device, not in a recording, but directly inside the minds of everyone in the room. The words were in Old Galactic, layered over a dozen other languages, and they resonated in the skull like a drumbeat. I am Verk Orin, and I am not who you think I am. The confession that followed lasted 12 minutes. The sphere told them that the founder had not been born on Cathar 3. He had been born on Earth 42,000 years ago to a human mother. But he was no ordinary human. He was the product of a genetic manipulation project conducted by a species that no longer existed, a species that had visited Earth during the last ice age and saw in early hominids the raw material for something extraordinary. They spliced their own genes into a lineage of humans, accelerating their cognitive evolution, and then they left. They intended to return and harvest their creation, but they were destroyed by an even older enemy before they could. The boy who would become Verk Orin was the last carrier of their genetic legacy. But here is where the story takes a turn that shattered every assumption. The sphere revealed that Orin hadn't simply left Earth and founded the Coalition later. He had left Earth, traveled to the core worlds using a stolen ship, and then deliberately manipulated dozens of primitive species into believing he was a godlike being from the stars. He seeded their cultures with the myth of a single founder who would unite them. He planted evidence of his own alien origin. Then, after centuries of work, he disappeared and allowed the legend to grow. The entire coalition was built on a lie. Its founder was a human being, from the very death world the galaxy species considered a savage backwater. Ambassador Vareth sank to his knees. For him, this was heresy on a scale that threatened to collapse not just his faith, but his entire civilization's sense of identity. The VAR, the warrior race who had always believed they alone understood struggle, would face the ultimate humiliation. The species they most respected, humanity, was essentially the origin of everything they held sacred. And that was before the sphere revealed the final, devastating secret. The reason Orin had sealed this vault, the sphere continued, was not to hide his origins. It was to hide what he was running from. The enemy that destroyed his creators was still out there, and it had been searching for the genetic legacy for 40,000 years. It had found Cathar 3. It had found the Coalition, and it had been watching Earth from beyond the galactic rim, waiting for the moment when the seed Orin planted would finally bloom. The moment humanity stepped onto the galactic stage. That moment, said the sphere, had just arrived, and the enemy was now on its way. The silence in that underground chamber lasted only a few seconds before Ambassador Vareth activated his emergency channel and called for an immediate lockdown of the entire sector. Within 20 minutes, the Taurus Mountains were surrounded by coalition security drones, human military personnel, and a perimeter that extended 50 kilometers in every direction. No transmissions were allowed in or out. The site was officially classified at the highest level of secrecy in both Earth and Coalition protocols. And inside that sealed room, a dozen people from two different worlds stood around a glowing sphere and tried to comprehend the fact that the greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced had been waiting for them since the last ice age. Dr. Vasquez was the first to speak after the sphere fell silent. She asked how long they had. The sphere responded that the enemy scouts had already breached the outer rim systems 18 standard days earlier. The main fleet would arrive in the Orion Arm within 6 months. The founder, it explained, had constructed a series of early warning beacons across the galactic fringe, beacons that had been dormant for millennia, and every single one of them had activated in the past 3 weeks. The sphere displayed a holographic map of the galaxy, and on it, a wave of red was creeping inward toward the core, swallowing system after system. But it was the identity of the enemy that truly broke Vareth. The sphere named them the Kelsharan, a species that appeared nowhere in the Coalition's history, yet whose name, when spoken in Old Galactic, triggered a genetic memory response in every sentient species except humanity. Vareth collapsed against the wall, his claws digging into the ancient stone, because he recognized the name not from scholarship but from his own nightmares. The Kelsharan were the monster in every nursery story across 200 worlds, the boogeyman that mothers used to frighten children into obedience. They were thought to be a myth, a collective archetype born from some ancient trauma shared by all intelligent life. And now, standing in a cavern beneath Earth, Vareth understood why. The reason every species in the galaxy feared the same faceless enemy was that they had all been engineered from the same stock. The Kelsharan were the original creators, and every sapient race in the Coalition was their long-abandoned experiment. When the experiments escaped and fled across the stars, the Kelsharan had pursued them. The difference was, Verk Orin had taken the escape to a new level by uniting the survivors into a civilization. But that was not the worst of it. The sphere informed them that the Kelsharan were not simply coming to reclaim their lost property. They were coming to erase it. For the past 40,000 years, they had refined a weapon that targeted not biology but consciousness itself. A wave that would reset every mind across a planet to a blank slate, a clean wipe of all memory, all culture, all identity. The Kelsharan did not want slaves. They wanted empty vessels, ready to be imprinted with whatever purpose they chose. And the only known antidote to this weapon was a specific genetic sequence, a sequence that Verk Oren had embedded into exactly one species during his final days on Earth: humanity. So the founder had not left Earth to forge a coalition out of ambition. He had done it to buy time, to use every other species as a delaying mechanism, a grand decoy that would keep the Kelsharan occupied across the galaxy, while humanity grew from primitive hunters into a spacefaring power. The entire coalition, all 200 member species, were unwitting soldiers in a 40,000-year rearguard action. Their destiny, from the moment Orin touched their genetic codes and planted the false myths of his divinity, was to fight and die so that Earth could one day be ready. It was the most colossal act of manipulation in galactic history. Vareth's horror now mixed with something else: rage. The VAR, who had spent millennia believing they were the galaxy's true warriors, were merely a weapon forged by a human on the anvil of cosmic deception. And now the bill was due. The Kelsharan fleet would arrive in 6 months. The coalition could fight, but without the genetic key that only humans carried, they would be fighting for a species that they had just learned was the real heir to the founder. The political implications were nuclear. But here is the detail that made everything infinitely worse. The sphere had one final function. It was not just a message. It was a launch trigger. The moment it activated, it sent a pulse to a dormant facility on Earth's moon, buried under the Mare Tranquillitatis for 12,000 years. That facility, built by Orin in his final act on the homeworld, contained a single ship, not large, not armed, but equipped with a faster-than-light drive that could reach the galactic core in days. Its purpose was to carry exactly one human passenger to the central nexus of the Kelsharan mind-wipe weapon. And there, the passenger would detonate a biological payload derived from the unique neural architecture that Orin had spent millennia perfecting. The weapon would be neutralized, but only if a human being was willing to make the journey, and only if they could survive the psychic assault that awaited them at the heart of the enemy's stronghold. The sphere's glow faded slightly, as if the founder's recorded consciousness understood the weight of what it was asking. It spoke again in a softer tone. "I have left you the key. I have left you the door. I have not left you the will to use it. That you must find on your own." Vareth stared at Vasquez. Vasquez stared at the sphere. And somewhere far beyond the edge of the galaxy, the Kelsharan detection nets registered the activation of the facility on Earth's moon. The countdown had begun. What happened next unfolded with a speed that no government on Earth or in the coalition was prepared for. Within 48 hours, a multinational team escorted by coalition special forces breached the lunar facility beneath the Sea of Tranquility. The ship Orin left behind was intact, its systems powered by a zero-point reactor that had waited 12 millennia to ignite. The engineering was centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed, yet when Dr. Vasquez placed her palm on the control panel, the ship recognized her DNA and powered up instantly. The founder had coded the vessel to answer only to a direct descendant of the Guardians, the lineage that had protected the vault since the beginning. Vasquez was not just a linguist. She was the last Guardian's granddaughter. The moment she understood that, she climbed into the pilot seat and told Earth Command she was going. There was no debate. The ship was meant for her. The journey to the galactic core took 5 days. Vasquez spent those days listening to the founder's final recordings, preloaded into the ship's memory. She learned that Verk Orin had not simply engineered a war across 40,000 years. He had engineered a temporal loop. More than 300,000 years in the future, the Kelsharan had already won. They had wiped the galaxy clean of all sapient life and ruled unchallenged for eons. But one remnant of the coalition, a single colony hidden in a pocket dimension, had spent millennia developing a desperate weapon, a chronoton pulse that could send a single consciousness backward through time, to a moment before the Kelsharen's final victory. They chose Orin, their greatest scientist and warrior, to carry their memories into the past. He emerged on prehistoric Earth, fused his consciousness with a genetically modified human embryo, and was reborn as the being the galaxy would later worship. The tablet he placed under the Anatolian mountain 12,000 years ago was not just a message. It was a temporal anchor. It locked the new timeline in place. And the moment humanity opened that vault, the loop was sealed. The future that had produced the Kelsharen victory could never happen. That was the truth that shattered Vasquez. The founder was not just a manipulator. He was a refugee from a dead future, sent to save a galaxy that did not yet know it was doomed. Every lie he told, every myth he planted, every species he engineered, all of it was a single, impossibly complex gambit to prevent an extinction event that had already occurred. And now, at the heart of the Kelsharan central nexus, that future was trying to reassert itself. The mind-wipe weapon they called the Silence was not a weapon of conquest. It was a failsafe, designed to prevent any species from ever again reaching the technological level necessary to discover time travel. The Kelsharan had been fighting this war across multiple iterations of the timeline. Vasquez was the final countermove. She emerged from faster-than-light speed inside the core, a region of space where physics bent into nightmare geometries. The ship's shields held, but the psychic assault began immediately. Visions of every possible future flooded her mind, timelines where humanity was erased, where the coalition crumbled, where the Kelsharan ruled for 1,000,000 years. She saw herself dying on 1,000 worlds. But the neural architecture that Orin had engineered into her bloodline 42,000 years ago did something extraordinary. It did not block the assault. It absorbed it. Every future, every death became part of her consciousness. She experienced the entire scope of the Kelsharan plan, and in that instant she understood exactly where to strike. The Silence was powered by a single massive consciousness, a gestalt of every mind they had ever erased. She flew straight into its heart, the biological payload primed. The explosion did not destroy the machine. It released those minds. Billions of souls from species long dead erupted from the Silence and turned on their captors. The Kelsharan, for the first time in their eternal existence, felt fear. The feedback loop collapsed the entire network. Across the galaxy, the approaching fleet lost its guidance and fell into chaos. The coalition, now fully mobilized under an emergency alliance brokered by Ambassador Vareth and Earth Command, struck every disabled Kelsharan vessel within range. In a single coordinated assault, the untouchable enemy was shattered. The Silence was ended. And deep inside the core, Dr. Elena Vasquez, the last Guardian's granddaughter, floated in the wreckage, holding the final fragment of Verk Orin's consciousness in the palm of her hand. He spoke to her one last time. The loop was closed, he said. Humanity was free. The galaxy was free. And now the universe could finally forget the war that had been fought across time itself. His last words were the same ones he had carved into the obsidian tablet, 12,000 years before he was born, in a language he knew only she would understand. Tell them who I was. This is the story that changed the galaxy, not the discovery of the tablet, though that alone would have been enough. Not even the revelation that the Coalition's most sacred founder was human, a truth that still sends tremors through every temple on Cathar 3. What changed the galaxy was the understanding that time itself had been weaponized by a future none of us will ever see, and that the entire history of intelligent life was one long act of defiance against an enemy that had already won. The Kelsharan are gone, their silence broken. But the question that Verk Orin left behind has no easy answer. If our existence is the product of a loop designed to undo a catastrophe, then what are we supposed to become now? Humanity is no longer just another species on the galactic stage. We are the living anchor of a timeline that should never have existed. The guardianship that Layla Demir's family maintained for 12,000 years has passed to all of us. The vault is empty. The founder's last words are now part of the public record, and a 17-year-old student in Istanbul just translated the final line of the tablet, a line everyone missed, which reads simply, "There is one more vault, and it is not on Earth." We will be here when that story unfolds. If you want to follow every discovery as it happens, make sure to subscribe and press the bell. History is not finished being rewritten.